ॐ आप्यायन्तु ममाङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुरथो श्रोत्रम् अतो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि सर्वं ब्रह्मोपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्यां मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत् अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मे अस्तु तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु ते मयि सन्तु ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः अनन्तगुणपूर्णत्वादगम्याय सुरैरपि सर्वेष्टदात्रे देवानां नमो नारायणाय ते. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to friends who have joined for part 5 of Talavakara Upanishad's Chintana, also known as Keno Upanishad. So the Rishi, let's think about the Rishi, Chaturmukha Brahma, Sadashiva, Parvati, Talavakara Rishi, and all the Acharyas who have given us the Bhashyas of this, Devatas. Vishnu primarily is the Devata for this Upanishad, who is also called Rishi, Kesha, Kapila, Aniruddha, and Gayatri. Chandas is Trishtup Chandas and Anushtup Chandas, primarily that is 44 syllables and 32 syllables. So we have done about 2 verses, I think almost. Om Kene Shitam Patati Preshitam Manaha Kena Pranaha Pratamaha Preiti Yuktaha Kene Shitam Vacham Imam Vadanti Chakshuhu Shrotram Kavudevo Yunakti. श्रोत्रस्य श्रोत्रं मनसा मनो यद्वाचोह वाचं सवुप्राणस्य प्राणः चक्षुषश्चक्षुः अतिमुच्य धीराः प्रेत्य अस्माद् लोकादमृता भवति. So pretya asmal lokad amruta bhavanti is the second verse. So last week we spent a lot of time talking doing this chintana. In fact, the second mantra we've been doing contemplation for a couple of weeks. Shrotrasya shrotram manasa mano yadvachaha vacham savupranasya pranaha chakshushash chakshuhu atimuchya dhiraha pretya asmal lokad amruta bhavati. So the first half and the half of the third line, they talk about 2 important doctrines. So that is what we were looking at last week. So the key message of the second verse is the 2 important doctrines of Vedantic philosophy. So what are the doctrines? The doctrine of dependence and independence. That is the Bimba Pratibimba Bhava. So there are 2 ways in which the Vedas, the Upanishads in particular, there are 2 ways in which the Upanishads discuss the dependence of the soul to the independent Brahman. What is that relationship? The Bimba Pratibimba Bhava is discussed in 2 different metaphors in Vedantic philosophy, which is really interesting. So one metaphor is the object and the image, with the reflecting medium, with the reflecting medium that reflects the image of the object. So that Bimba Pratibimba Bhava is one aspect which we discussed in Rig Veda. We discussed in Madhu Brahmanam or Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, where the verses are very similar to Rig Veda. Rupam Rupam Pratirupo Babhuva Tadasya Rupam Pratichakshanaya Indro Mayabihi Purarupa Iyate Yuktahi Asya Harayah Shatajasha. Rig Veda. The same verses of the Rig Veda also appear in Madhu Brahmanam or Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Katha Upanishad, as we know, talks about this in various ways. Agnir yatoko bhuvanam pravishta, Vayur yata eko bhuvanam pravishta, Surya yata sarva lokasya chakshuhu, Eko vashi sarva bhutantaratma, Ekam rupam bahuda yah karoti, Tam atmastam ye anupashyanti dhiraha, Tesham Sukam Shashwatam Na Itaresham, a verse from Katha Upanishad. So, and of course, Sutra. So, all these verses, they look at the relationship between the soul and the super soul in an object and an image kind of metaphor. Yeah. So, that is one way of looking at it. And as we discussed before, this discussion should not be taken literally. It just talks about the dependence of the reflection on the object. If the object moves, the reflection moves. That is all to it. There is a little bit of resemblance between the image and the object, and that the image moves only when the object moves, in the sense that the image is totally under the control of the object. That is the philosophy there, nothing else. Not that if the reflecting medium goes, the image goes and all that. No, that is not what the Rig Veda is talking about. It's talking about that dependence. And here also, some folks think if the mirror goes away, then the all that is left is the object, and that there is a flaw in that argument, in the sense that, and Krishna has told us in the Gita that the reflecting medium and the reflected image is one and the same. That is the Jiva himself, and the Jiva is Nitya. Yeah, and we discussed about that relationship between the object and the image, and what are all the conditions in which the image can disappear. There are no conditions in which the image called the Jiva can disappear. Okay, so that is that Bimba Pratibimba Bhav. Then, of course, there is another metaphor that we saw in Prashna Upanishad, when Kaushalyashcha Ashwalayana asked this question as to where did prana come from, who regulates the prana tattva, who controls the prana tattva, and so on. When that discussion was happening, our Pippalada Rishi gave an example of a shadow and the object. Yeah, so the shadow is entirely dependent on the object. As long as the object is there, the shadow is there. If the object moves, the shadow moves. The shadow has a shape which is kind of similar to the object, but it is not quite the same. They are different. They are different in that sense. The shadow is not the object. Yeah, so this is also another beautiful analogy of the Bimba Pratibimba Bhava relationship by taking a shadow. Yeah, so again, Pipalada was very happy that Ashwalayana asked that question. He said, Ati prashnan pruchasi brahmishto asiti tasmate aham bravimi yata esha purushe chaya etasmin etam atatam, as he said. Yeah, so that shadow is the Jiva, the object is the person who is walking, the Purusha is the Paramatma, very similar to Bimba and Pratibimba. So this is one of the key ideas that is discussed in the second verse. If we have this concept of Bimba Pratibimba Bhava, then we can understand Shrotasya Shrotram, Manasa Mano, Vachaha Vacham, Pranasya Pranaha, Chakshushas Chakshuhu. Shrotra's Bimba is this Shrotrasya Bimba. Manasas Bimba is Manaso Manaha. This Vacha, that is the Abhimani of the Vak, Agni's Bimba is Vachaha Vacham. Prana's Bimba is Pranasya Bimba. Surya's Bimba is Chakshushas Chakshuhu. Yeah, so that is how we understand that verse of regulator. So here is an important point. If somebody is regulating, then there must, so a regulator and the regulated must exist. Otherwise, there is no question of this controllership, regulatorship. Only when there is a regulator and something that needs to be regulated, then it makes sense talking about this. And also understand regulatorship is an attribute. Okay? A Nirguna Brahman, for example, cannot have regulatorship because it's an attribute. Okay? So these are all some of the philosophies that you need to remind yourself and do comparative analysis with other schools of Vedanta. So moving on, and of course the second important concept is Antaryamitva. Yeah, this Antaryamin. Antaryamin is the important concept there. And again, this comes in Antaryami Brahmanam, isn't it, of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. So the Antaryamin of Chakshus, the Antaryamin of Surya is Surya Narayana. Antaryamin of Agni is Agni Narayana. Antaryamin of Rudra is this Manaso Manam. So that is how you understand, and that is exactly what the Antaryami Brahmanam of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad talks about. Antaryami, he who is inside. Yeah, Yaha Prane Tishtan Pranad Antaro Yam Prano Naveda Yasya Pranaha Shariram Yah Pranam Antaro Yamayati Yeshata Atma Antaryami Amrutaha. Yeah, so those are all the verses, and there are so many verses in Antaryami Brahman of Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which is exactly the idea that our second verse of Keno Upanishad talks about. Okay, so here is another discussion that we need to remind ourselves, and we have kind of dealt with all this before. If I am inside a house, I and the house do not become one. Just because I've entered into the house does not mean me and the house are one. Okay, that exactly is the idea of Antaryamin, inside this Jivatma. Inside the Jivatma is the Antaryamin. That means what? Jivatma is there, inside him is this Antaryamin. And again, Antaryamitva, that ability to be inside the Jiva is an attribute. Nirguna Brahman cannot have this attribute. Yeah, Antaryamitva is an attribute. If I'm inside a house, I and the house do not become one. Okay, so this we have kind of understood in previous satsangs that we have done. So in summary, the first two lines and the first half of the third line, they talk about these two primary concepts of Vedantic philosophy. One is Bimba Pratibimba Bhava, that is, that there is this regulator, my controller, my regulator. Who is my controller and my regulator? My Antaryamin. So that is the second concept. So those are all the two ideas. These are core pillars of Vedantic philosophy. Two pillars of Vedantic philosophy are these two. And if we have understood this, we not only understood the second verse, we have not, but we have also understood the whole of Vedantic philosophy. And if we put this into practical application, there is a huge benefit. Okay, so what is that benefit of knowing this entity? That is the next line, isn't it? So let's spend 2-3 minutes just reminding ourselves what is this line actually spoke about. If we understood the regulatorship and antaryamitva of Paramatma, then we have a hope. Okay, if we have understood that, then we become dhiras. Dhiya ramate iti dhiraha. He who is relishing in knowledge is dhiraha. What is that knowledge? The knowledge of regulator and antaryamin. And if we are dhiras, then what is the benefit that we get? Atimuchya pretya asmad lokad amruta bhavati. Okay, so let's think about this word pretya. Okay, pretya is important. Pretya means pra-eti. Okay, pra means prakarsha, prakrishta, very well, highest. Eti means climbs up. He goes up. That is what is called pretya. Goes up. The highest levels of going up is what? Liberation. Okay, so that is the meaning of pretya. Yeah, yes, and Katha Upanishad also talks about this. Mundaka Upanishad talks about this. Chandogya Upanishad talks about this. So we will do that over the next 3-4 minutes and try and kind of understand the summary of this particular line. So you have two concepts here: Pretya, Asmat, Lokat. Okay. So what is this Lokat? Lokat means Loka means a place. Yeah. So this could be this place, this material universe, or your body. Your body is the place in which the jiva resides and carries out its samsara. So this loka means two things. One is the material universe where the samsara is happening, and this samsara is happening with us being inside this body, which is also called loka. So if you have understood the first 2.5 lines, then what happens is Pretya asmad lokat. So this material body, okay, this material, gross material body, you leave, you shed this gross material body, and pretya, you climb up, you go up. Okay, so this is the journey of souls, really, isn't it? So pre-creation stage, what is happening? Before we came into this material world, we always existed. We always had a linga sharira, and in the linga sharira, we have been having this karmic imprints and the cosmic ignorance. Anadi, from beginningless time, we have had this ignorance and the karmic imprints. And then what happens when Om Atataha Vishnu said and the universe came into being, then all the Jivarasis then acquired their material bodies based on their karmas that they have had. Okay, that karmas gives them, decides what kind of body they get. So they get the gross body. Remember, there is the linga sharira, which is the subtlest of the bodies that jivas always have. Then in creation, they acquire gross body, which is their creation. That is you and me and elephant and tiger and ants and worms and what have you. And then, of course, we do all sorts of nasty things and we accumulate more karmas and we go round and round in cycles. So this is the cycle of samsara, right? Karma and samsara. And you are acquiring the gross body is our creation. But we have always had the linga sharira. So when Chaturmukha says Pretya Asmat Lokat means say you shed this gross body. Okay, you shed this gross body, and then what happens? Because you have no karmic imprints and you shed the gross body, you go to Satyaloka, and we have done this. We hang out with Chaturmukha Brahma and wait for Chaturmukha to finish his 100 years. And then what happens? Atimuchya. Then atimuchya means shedding even your linga sharira. You shed your linga sharira also is the meaning of atimuchya. Pretya asmat lokat means you shed the gross body. And then atimuchya means you shed the linga sharira. And then what happens? Until you shed the linga sharira, you don't have actually amruta. Only after shedding of the linga sharira, you achieve amruta bhavanti. Okay, so this becomes important. This is the real journey of souls. And of course, Katha Upanishad also says, isn't it? Tataga sargeshu lokeshu sharirattvaya kalpate. So this is the idea that after 100 years of Chaturmukha, so what happens? Our Mundaka Upanishad says this, Te Brahmalokeshu Parantakale Paramrutaha Parimuchayanti Sarve. So what happens? All guys go to Brahmaloka, which is what is Brahmaloka? Satyaloka. So they stay with Chaturmukha. Then Parantakale means what? Mahapralaya. Mahapralaya means even when the whole universe is dissolved, then what happens? All of us, Chaturmukha will take all of us, yeah. And of course, we all go into the womb of Brahman again. Then what happens? We stay there in the womb of Brahman. Then in the next creation, Katha Upanishad is the link there. Tataha sargeshu lokeshu sharirattvaya kalpate. So when the next creation happens, then what happens? Our Chaturmukha, for the deserving souls, takes them through the Viraja Nadi. We shed their linga sharira, which is the atimuchya. Then we have pristine Jiva in companionship with Paramatma in Vaikunta. Or we can take a dip in Vaitarni, that is Duryodhana and his friends, and there are many of those in the current world. So they will all go along with Duryodhana, have a dip in Vaitarni, and go to Andhatamas. Or 99, I think 99% of us will be Nitya Samsarins and go round and round in circles in the next creation. Okay, so this is the whole journey of souls that Chaturmukha is reminding us in this second verse. Okay, exactly the same view of Chandogya Upanishad, and this is a beautiful section in the 8th Adhyaya. Yeah, so we don't have time to go through every verse here. Yeah, but the last line I will just remind you: Brahmalokam abhisampadhyate. Brahmalokam abhisampadhyate nacha punaravartate nacha punaravartate. Beautiful verse of Chandogya Upanishad. You go to Brahmaloka and onwards to Brahmaloka, then you shed your Linga Sharira, then you are in Vaikunta. Once you crossed over to the transempirical plane, there is no return for you. Nacha punaravartate, nacha punaravartate of Chandogya Upanishad, which is exactly what Brahma Sutra, the very last verse, 564th aphorism says, Anavrittihi Shabdat, Anavrittihi Shabdat. So Shabdat means what? Vedas. Vedas are saying Anavrittihi, Anavrittihi. Once you cross over to Vaikuntha, there is no return for you. There is no return for you. Which Shabdas? The Shabdas of the Chandogya Upanishad, the Shabdas of Mundaka Upanishad, Katha Upanishad, and Kena Upanishad are saying the same thing about no return. So that is the benefit. That is the huge benefit we can incur if we understood that first 2.5 verses of the second mantra. Okay, so we kind of move on. So now what is happening is, if you remember the very first verse, he said Kavudevo Yunakti. You remember? Let's go back to the first verse and think about it. Keneshitam patati preshitam manaha kena pranaha pratamaha preiti yuktaha keneshitam vacham imam vadanti chakshuhu shrotram. Kavudevo Yunakti. Yunakti means regulator. Which Deva? Kavu, explain to me about the Deva who's regulating this. So that is what Rudra has asked Chaturmukha. Kavu, Devo, Yunakti. It's not that Rudra does not know that this Antaryamin is regulating. No, he wants to know more about this regulating Antaryamin. Kavu, Devo, Yunakti, that Antaryamin who's regulating me, tell me more about him. Okay. How can I understand the independent regulator of all? Please explain in detail what is that regulatorship actually means. How can I understand that regulatorship fully? How can I know that regulator fully? I want to have a comprehensive view of that regulator. Kavudevo Yunakti. So immediately Chaturmukha Brahma. So remember, the first question is what Rudra asked. All other answers are coming from Chaturmukha Brahma. Chaturmukha immediately puts, and our gurus tell us this is the most important philosophy of the Vedas. If we understood the third verse, then we have also understood the deep philosophies of the Vedas that we need to think about. Natatra, so Chaturmukha immediately says, Natatra chakshur gacchati, navag gacchati, no manaha, na vidmaha, na vijanimaha, yat yetat anushishyat. Okay, so Chaturmukha says, oh Rudra, you're asking me about this, the great controller, how to know him, how can I know him fully, tell me more about him. Chaturmukha is saying, I don't know how to explain it to you. Okay, this is Chaturmukha, okay, who is the highest among the souls. We call him as Jivottama. He belongs to the category of Rujus, Rujugana Devatas, Rujus, highest among souls. And this Chaturmukha, who is all knowledgeable, who's got so much knowledge, he is telling Rudra, I don't know how to explain that great Lord, that great Antaryami, that great Paramatma. I actually don't know how to explain to you. न तत्र चक्षुर्गच्छति न वाग्गच्छति नो मनः न विद्मः न विजानीमो यत् एतत् अनुशुष्यात्. So at this point, our gurus also remind us, if an atheist comes to you and says, tell me about your God, show me God, and so on, if he comes and tells you, it's very difficult. If you are an aparoksha jnanin, if you have actually seen Paramatma, it is actually very difficult to explain to somebody, particularly, it could be a sadhaka or it could also be an atheist. And to explain to him who this Paramatma is actually very difficult to put in words and explain who this Paramatma is. Okay, so we'll kind of come to that in a minute, yeah, and open this up for discussion. So this third mantra, again, we always do a chandas upasane. So the third mantra is an anushtup chandas. If you remember, the first two were in. Who wants to answer that quick quiz? What were the first two mantras? In which chandas were the first two mantras? Let's go back. Trishtup. Yeah, the first two mantras were in Trishtup Chandas. Burik Trishtup, as we call it, whereas this mantra is in Anushtup Chandas. And this is also interesting, and we'll come to that as to why these numbers games are interesting in Vedanta. Anushtup has got 32 syllables, but actually this mantra is 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 7. It's only got 31 syllables. It's called Nichrit. Nichrit Anushtup. If you're a purist, it's a Nichrit Anushtup. Which one? The last one. Yat etat anushishyat. Okay. So you can read it as 7 syllables or you can also read it as 8 syllables. Okay. If you're a purist, you will know that this is a Nichrit Anushtup and it is set in Nichrit Anushtup for a particular reason. So we'll come to that when we are doing this Chintana of this mantra. Na tatra chakshur gacchati, na vag gacchati, no manaha, na vidmaha, na vijanimo yat etat anusishyad. Chaturmukha Brahma himself saying, I don't know how to explain Brahman. Okay. So I want to just open it up for our contemplation and think and our contributions today. Brahman, is he knowable or unknowable? So what do we think from our own satsang that we have been doing for over 5 years? Do we think Brahman is knowable or unknowable? If he is unknowable, then why waste time? If he is knowable, how much can we know him? So who wants to take up and give their ideas here, please? Okay, so we all accept that.
Based on our capacity, he is knowable. He is knowable, but based on how much we can, how much of our capacity it is.
Thank you very much, Pratibha ji. We also had another colleague contributing as well. Who was it? No worries. Okay, so Pratibha ji got the gist of it. He potentially is knowable, but only based on our capacity. But then Chaturmukha Brahma is saying, Natatra chakshur gacchati, navag gacchati, no manaha, no vidmaha, na vijanimo, yat etad anishishya. So let's kind of dive deep into this verse to try and understand what is the truth that Chaturmukha is bringing home in this verse through Rudra to us. Okay. So let us think about this. How do we get knowledge of mundane things? Okay. Mundane things means what? These things in the universe. How do we get the knowledge of mundane things in the universe? So we have to start at that level and then slowly dive deep into this and then link it up with this first. So how do we get knowledge? By perceiving material things directly. So we can see something with our eyes and say we can get a knowledge of something that we perceive. That perception can be through all of the five jnana indriyas, not just with eyes, with taste, with touch, with smell, with hearing. We can get some knowledge of the material things that is outside us. Okay. Sometimes we may not have that thing in front of us. We may not be able to directly perceive something, but we can get to know about that particular thing by hearing about it from someone who has seen it. Yeah, so that is another way, isn't it? So, for example, if somebody says, look, I've been to the Sistine Chapel, but we might not have gone, but somebody says, I've been to Sistine Chapel in Rome. It's so beautiful, and explain all the excellent paintings and sculptures there. So we get some idea. So if we can't directly perceive something, we get to know by hearing about it from someone talking about it. So we hear what that someone is talking about it. So we hear that talking, that walk, we hear that and we get some knowledge. Okay. Or sometimes the first two may not operate, by perceiving material things or by somebody telling us. Sometimes we can directly experience through our material mind. Yeah. We may not even know that this is an ice cream, but we just lick something and you get a taste and you experience that. Once you have experienced the taste of an ice cream, that is it. Yeah, you've experienced that and you've got the knowledge of the ice cream. Okay. So those are generally the three routes by which we can get some knowledge of mundane things. Yeah. There is no other route in which we get knowledge: by perceiving material things, or by hearing from someone, or sometimes directly experiencing through our material mind. That is what is going on, isn't it? When I lick an ice cream, the sense impulses go to the brain and goes to the mind. The mind processes it and then delivers this to the soul, and the soul then says, now I get the knowledge of the taste of this ice cream. Yeah, the knowledge is an experience of the soul. Yeah. Now let us stay with this ice cream metaphor. How do we get the knowledge of how an ice cream tastes? Let us look at this cone with ice cream. Can we get a knowledge of how an ice cream tastes in this equation? Can you describe the taste of an ice cream by seeing it? Similarly, can we know God by this process? By just looking or reading or whatever? Maybe will we get the knowledge of God? If we go to a temple and we see a vigraha, or we put a frame and you look at a photo, do we actually, are we actually seeing that? Think about it. Yeah, I don't have an answer at this point, but we'll come to that a little bit later. But think about this problem. Even a mundane thing, by some mundane things, even by seeing them, you'll never get the taste of an ice cream. If somebody else tells, oh, this ice cream is so sweet, and it is sweet and sour, and it's got this texture and so on and so forth, the person starts talking about that. Even then, we do not get that knowledge of that how an ice cream tastes. We have only heard it, but we don't get it. Can you describe the taste of an ice cream by speech? It's actually extremely difficult. You cannot. How much ever you try, you will not be able to capture the taste of an ice cream completely by your speech. That is a limitation of speech as well, that our gurus remind us again and again. Speech has got limitation. It can only give you some indication, but it cannot actually give you the knowledge, like a taste of an ice cream. Can we know God by this process? Because we have heard somebody saying something, or we have heard in satsangs, including this one about Paramatma. Can we know God by this process? Think about it. By doing manana of how an ice cream could taste, could we still get the knowledge of how an ice cream tastes? Can you know the taste of an ice cream by merely thinking about it? Think about it. Or experience through the medium of our material mind. So until we experience something, so let us take a material thing such as ice cream, until we actually put that ice cream on our tongue and then taste the ice cream and experience the taste of the ice cream, we will never get that knowledge of how an ice cream tastes. Okay, so this is a very, very, very important concept. that we need to understand. Experience. Experience is the foundation of philosophy. Okay. And this is the foundation of Srimad Acharya's philosophy from the Vedas. Experience is the foundation of philosophy. If you deny experience, as some Vedantists do, perception itself is false. Yeah. Vimatam mitya drishyatvat. Yeah. So even the perception, the experience itself is mithya, then how can you frame a philosophy? Experience is the foundation of philosophy, and the philosophy should be able to explain the experiences that you're having. We experience knowledge. Okay, so this is important. So why we are thinking about this is this question: can we know God by this process? That is, by perceiving material things, or somebody saying something, or constantly thinking about this thing because we are in manana. Can we know Paramatma in that process? Anybody wants to give us an idea? Can we know about Paramatma through the material processes that we are doing at this point? Is it possible? Who is going to kind of give their ideas here, opinion about this important problem? Because when an atheist comes and says, show us God, we are really stuck because we can't show Paramatma by these processes that the atheists are very familiar with. So we need to be equipped with that idea. So we all, I think, agree, unless somebody wants to come in, we can never perceive Paramatma directly how we perceive material things. It is just not possible. Okay, why is that the case? Here I have a small quiz for us to think about. So we have the knowledge of Paramatma, right? That is what we are after. We want to get knowledge of this Paramatma. So I've told you experience is the foundation of philosophy. We experience knowledge. Awareness comes to us. We become aware. We experience that awareness. So we experience knowledge. A stone does not experience knowledge. Yeah. Only sentient beings experience knowledge. So this study of knowledge is actually very, very, very important. The study of knowledge base is the foundation for the study of things in the universe. If we do not have the foundation of knowledge, then we will never be able to know about things in the universe. So quick quiz. What is the study of knowledge in philosophy known as? So who wants to take this question? What is the study of knowledge, let's say, in Western philosophy known as?
Paroksha Jnana is one. Masunuji, I have one doubt also in this. We cannot see the Lord because of He is aprakrita sharira, that we know, that as you have said, He's not made of material things, so we can't know Him through material sense organs and all. But is this knowledge a material thing? It's immaterial. Is the knowledge material, or it's not
So
made of this panchabhutas? It is something else. So that's why
yeah,
through knowledge we know the Lord.
So very, very interesting question, Pratibhaji. So any knowledge that we get, any bahya indriya knowledge, the knowledge of the external world that we get through our sense organs, how does that happen? It's called manovritti jnana. It is the modification of the mind stuff that the jiva perceives. So that manovritti jnana is prakrita jnana. Okay. Whereas the knowledge that the soul gets inherently, the swarupa jnana, that is aprakrita jnana. So aprakrita jnana is the swarupa jnana that the soul gets inherently, intrinsically about the antaryamin who is inside it. That is called swarupa jnana or aprakrita jnana. But all knowledge of the external world is a modification of the mind stuff, which is called manovritti jnana. So we have to make those distinctions. So Pratibhaji, if you stay with us, for, the subsequent slides will eventually come to that particular point. But great question. We had Suresh and Prakash ji wanting to answer the study of knowledge in philosophy. So do you want to pick that up, Suresh?
Is it ontology, Mataji?
So ontology is the study of things. Ontology is about study of various real things that exist out there.
Is it epistemology?
Very good. Who was that? Who gave the answer? Sorry.
Neeta here.
Oh, Nida. Yes, yes, of course. Yeah, yes. Yes, absolutely. Nida ji is right. That's called epistemology. The study of knowledge in philosophy is called epistemology. And based on the knowledge, we understand what are those real things that they exist out there, and we categorize them. That is called ontology. Yeah. So epistemology is the study of knowledge and the means of knowledge. Okay, so I don't think this is we are regressing, but actually this verse natatra chakshur gacchati navag gacchati no manaha na vidmaha na vijanimo yati etat anushishyad. Why did Chaturmukha Brahma, who is the highest among the souls, he's a Rijugana Devata, and he's Riju are the highest, most knowledgeable among the souls. He says that we cannot know, I don't know, I don't know. Why is that? Why is that Chaturmukha is saying that? To understand that, we need to know about pramana. Okay, so pramana is epistemology. Okay, so in Vedic philosophy, pramanam is about knowledge, understanding what is pramana lakshana, what is the definition of knowledge. Pramana lakshana, okay, is epistemology. If epistemology is a modern Western time, pramana lakshana has been there in Vedas for eternity. We have always, our rishis have been so focused on pramana. Knowledge is very important. How do I know I've got the right knowledge? It's very, very, very important. Okay, so what we will do in the rest of this session, and I hope it's not too complicated, but to understand the intensity in which Chaturmukha Brahma is saying the third verse, I think we need to have a background of this, and of course we never lose any opportunity to contemplate on the Sarvamula Granthas. So Srimad Acharya wrote a fundamental treatise on epistemology called Pramana Lakshana, okay, about knowledge. Okay, what is knowledge? What are the means of knowledge itself is a huge study. Okay, it's called Pramanam. Yatartam Pramanam. Okay, I'll just go through it, but we'll come to this Anupramanam, which is important. Yatartam Pramanam. Pramanam means Yata Artha. Okay, that knowledge which shows the objects as they are. So Artha means objects, Yata means as it is. Okay, so if I have a knowledge of an ice cream as it is, then that knowledge of the ice cream is true and real. Yeah, Yatartam Pramanam. Okay, and our Acharya defined pramanams, knowledge, into two types, which is beautiful. Tat Dvividam, Kevalam Anupramanam cha. Kevala Pramanam, Anupramanam. Okay, Kevala Pramanam means knowledge. That pure knowledge is called Kevala Pramanam. Whereas Anupramanam means the means by which we get the true knowledge. The means by which we get Kevala Pramanam is called Anupramanam. Okay, think about this. The technical terms may sound a little complicated. Google's Pramana Lakshana. There is another amazing work of Jayatirtha called Pramana Paddhati, which actually elaborates Pramana Lakshanam and talks about epistemology in great detail. Okay, so Anupramanam, Tat Sadhanam Anupramanam Trividam. Okay, there are three means of knowledge, said Acharya. So here is a quick question. What are the three means of knowledge for us? Who is going to answer that? What are the three means by which we can get knowledge?
Did you say Pratyaksha Pramana, Paroksha Pramana, Shastra Pramana? All those were Pramanas you taught us, isn't it?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Shilaji. Yeah, Neetaji?
Pratyaksha Anumana Agama.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Sushut. So, yeah, so both Shilaji and Sushutji are right. So, Anupramanam Trividam Pratyaksham Anumanam Agama Iti. Okay. The whole of spheres in which mundane jivas get knowledge of the material world can be classified into these three: Pratyaksha, Anumana, and Agama. So, what are these? So let us think about this. What are these Pratyaksha, Anumana, Agama? So, whatever that needs to be known is called Jnaya. Okay, and somebody knows about this Jnaya or the object. So, that fellow is called Jnatra. Okay, and to the Jnatra, knowledge dawns. This is the fundamental axiomatic position. There must be something to be known called Jnaya. There must be a knower called Jnatra. And for that Jnatra, Jnana comes. Okay, so here is the key aspect that Acharya has established. There is a bipolar character of knowledge. There is always a subject and an object. Knowledge on its own does not exist. You cannot have some esoteric something called knowledge on its own. Wherever there is knowledge, there has to be a nyatra and a nyeya. Think about this problem. This is a deep philosophical issue that Vedantists debate about. Okay, but if you want to have the correct view on this, please read Pramana Lakshanam and Pramana Paddhati of Jayatirtha. Yeah, so knowledge always has bipolar character. There is always a subject and there is an object. Nyatra becomes aware, experiences that knowledge. Okay, and if that knowledge is unsublated is a technical term. Maybe we'll research. It's like, that rope and a snake thing that we have done. So initially you're walking, and then the rope appears like a snake, so you get that knowledge of a snake. But when you go close by, then you get the knowledge of the rope. So the knowledge of the snake is not true knowledge, because it has been sublated by knowledge of a rope. And that knowledge of a rope is always there. That knowledge of the rope does not get sublated again. That is always there. So that is true knowledge. Okay? That which is unsublated and the jiva becomes aware of it defines true knowledge. And as Pratibha ji was mentioning about it, there are two ways in which you can get knowledge. Okay, manovritti jnana, swarupa jnana. Again, we have to classify this. Manovritti jnana means with our mind, that mind modification that generates some data that the jiva then processes data and then gets the knowledge of the external world. That is called manovritti jnana. Swarupa Jnana is the jiva, the non-material jiva, gets the knowledge of non-material Paramatma and also about its own nature and so on. So that is called Swarupa Jnana. Okay, so we need to keep these ideas together. So Manovritti Jnana is what happens in the mundane world. Whatever we are doing and whatever knowledge that we are getting is all through Manovritti Jnana, modification of the mind. Okay, which even our neurophysiologists would accept. So there are three, right? So there is the pratyaksha. Pratyaksha, you have all the 5 sense organs, and there are the external world. The sense organs sends the input to the brain, the mind processes it, the intellect processes it further, and then offers it to the jiva, and the jiva then knows this. Okay, so this is a sequence for pratyaksha. And nirdosha artha indriya sannikarshaha pratyaksham. This is important. Okay, the contact between the sense organ and the sense object should be defectless. That is the key criteria for a true perceptual knowledge. If you look at this definition of Acharya, all other confusions that are there will be cleared very instantaneously, particularly around the rope and the snake syllogism, the conch shell and the silver syllogism, and so on and so forth, will all get cleared when we look at this nirdosha artha indriya sannikarshaha pratyaksham. Anumana is what? You see the smoke, then you infer a fire in the mountain, because in the kitchen you have seen a smoke and a fire and you got that vyapti. Nirdosha upapattir anumanam. Okay. Words are what? Nirdosha shabdaha agamaha. Defectless words. Apaurushya Veda is defectless, because it is apaurushya, it is nitya, it is swataha pramanya. So in all those criteria, nirdoshaha shabdaha agamaha, it is nirdoshaha. So those are the 3 routes in which we get knowledge. So this we have to keep in mind. If an atheist tells us, can you show me God? With that background, if we look at this verse, then it opens up in various levels. Okay, the first level, let's think about this. Natatra chakshur gacchati, navag gacchati, no manaha. So now you understand the manovritti jnana and all that. So let us look at the first. Na tatra chakshur gacchati. Chakshus means what? Eyes. Eyes means what? Pratyaksha. Pratyaksha jnana. Na tatra chakshur gacchati. Perception, mundane perception through our material Indias may not show him. Na vag gacchati. This is interesting. Agamas. The vak is what? Speech, right? Speech is verbs. Even that, our Chaturmukha says, na vak gacchati. Even vak cannot show him. This is puzzling, but we'll come to that in a minute. No manaha. Manaha there may have so many meanings. One thing is manana. Mana means manana. Manana means thinking about this. And many of the inference is all about its playing of mind. You think about, then you connect this and that, and then you get a knowledge. So there anumana can also can come here. So pratyaksha, anumana, and agama may not be able to show us God. Can we know God through these instruments of knowledge? Anybody wants to tell us very briefly? Can we know through Pratyaksha, Agama, or Anumana? Can we know Paramatma through these means? Because these are the only three means that we have at our disposal to know Paramatma. Anybody wants to come in here and share their thoughts? No worries. So we've kind of done this already. So we probably cannot, because this Paramatma, as Pratibha ji mentioned, is non-material, aprakrita. How can we use our material stuff to do this? That is one of the reasons why na tatra chakshur gacchati, davag gacchati, no manaha. Okay. So let's move into the second order. Why this order? Why three only mentioned? Why prana not mentioned here? So all these questions come because if you look at the previous verse, all prana was there. Shrotrasya shrotram, manasa mano, yadvachaha vacham, savu pranasya pranaha, chakshushas chakshuhu. Five things were discussed in Chaturmukha, but in the third verse, he puts only three: eyes, mind, eyes, speech, and mind. And in that particular order, because of what we have described so far about that ice cream thing, experiencing of an ice cream, for example, of a material thing. But we cannot do that with Paramatma, who is completely non-material. Why three only mentioned? Think about this. Eyes, Jnana Indriya. Vak, Karma Indriya. Manas, internal sense organ. And he has given these, and by extrapolation we can understand. Eyes means implies all other jnana indriyas. Vak implies other karma indriyas also. And internal sense organ, of course, is antakarana, as it's called, is the mind. Why prana not mentioned here is very interesting. As to Chaturmukha himself is prana, right? In the previous creation, he was Vayu, and he became Chaturmukha Brahma in this creation. And he carefully not mentions prana, although he mentions prana in the previous verse. He doesn't, probably because prana has highest knowledge among jivas. Chaturmukha also has highest knowledge among jivas. He doesn't mention those. He mentions all other guys. He mentions only Tattvabhimani Devatas here. He mentions Tattvabhimani Devatas. Chakshus, Vak, and Manas are all Tattvabhimani Devatas. Yes. Whereas our Vayu, Chaturmukha, they come in a slightly different category that we will discuss that in a few minutes. So that is another contemplation as to why this order. Now let us go, having understood, having had this basics of what is going on here. Now let us understand what is it that our Chaturmukha Brahma is telling. Na tatra chakshur gacchati. Okay. Let's split it open. Na tatra chakshuhu gacchati. So this is important. Gacchati means goes. Okay. Eyes don't go anywhere. They're sitting right in our face. It is right there. The eyes are just there. They don't go anywhere. So what is the meaning of saying the eyes don't go, the speech don't go, the mind don't go? What does that mean, go? Okay. Ye gatyartakaha te te jnanartakaha. To go means to know in the Vedas. Yeah. Wherever you see gacchati, gamya, agamya, gamya, and all that. So even agama is interesting. So anybody wants to tell us what is the etymology of agama? So because we're doing gacchati, agama just came to my mind. Anybody wants to share their ideas of why Vedas are called agamas? Yeah. So think about gamya, gamana, goes. Agamya, you go, you get to go means to know. That body of scriptures that gives you the knowledge, you get the knowledge. Agamya, agama. Okay. So gachati there means to go. To go means to know. Okay. So here a simple first level, superficial level meaning is na tatra chakshur gachati means to know. You cannot know through the material eyes. Yeah, so this is Pratibhaji has already given us that answer. This is a known fact. If an atheist comes and tells you, show me God, you can say, I can't show you God with the material eyes. Period. Yeah. Because God is not material, so I cannot show you. Yeah. Material eyes cannot obtain the knowledge of Him because material eyes can see only material things. How can I show you with my eyes, or how can you see with your material eyes that Paramatma who is non-material? Because then you can say, look, our Vedas tell you, Paranchikani Vyatrinati Swayambhuhu Tasmat Parang Pashyati Na Antaratman. So the default position in which Paramatma has created is our eyes are always external facing. Paranchikani Vyatrinat Swayambhuhu. Tasmat, therefore, Parang Pashyati. All of us will see only for externally. That is, these eyes are placed by Paramatma so that we always see the external world. Okay? But there are some fellows who can see Antaratman, but most of us don't think. So, Tasmat Parang Pashyati Na Antaratman. And of course, Yama says, but there are some fellows who will go inside, they'll close the external eyes, they will go inside, they will do dhyana. Then with their inner eyes, they'll open their third eyes and then they will see Paramatma. That is the conversation. But the material eyes cannot obtain, we cannot obtain the knowledge of Paramatma through our material eyes. Okay. Why God cannot be known by sense perception or instruments used to its sense perception? Every scientific instrument that we have, be it the Hubble or the James Webb telescope or whatever microscopes that we have in our centers, research centers, whatever, cyclotron, whatever you want to break open and read and understand the matter, it is all material. Even the instruments are material. If the instruments are material, they will only see material things, they will not see non-material things. Yeah. And through the instruments we use our eyes, then we interpret all these data. Okay. So this is a big problem. We cannot show an atheist Paramatma because God is non-material. Yeah. Paro matraya tanva vrudana nate mahitvam anvashnuvanti. Paro matraya. Matra means tanmatras. Paraha matraya. He is beyond matter. You cannot see him. Okay. Yad annena atirohati, says Purusha Shukta. Anna means Mula Prakriti, Lakshmi. Yad annena atihi. He is beyond even Anna means matter. He is also beyond Lakshmi, Shri Tattva, Purusha Shukta. And the same Brahma Sutra says, Arupavad evahi tat pradhanatva. Pradhana means Prakriti, matter. He is beyond. He is beyond Pradhana. Arupavad, in that sense, he doesn't have material form. Yeah. Arupavad evahi tat pradhanat. He is beyond matter. He does not have a material form. So when that is the case, how can we see him? Okay. Who wants to recite our usual 15, 16 to 18, chapter 15, 16 to 18 verse, which becomes important here. So let's get one of us to recite that, please. Who wants to do that?
द्वाविमौ पुरुषौ लोके शरश्चाक्षर एव च शरः सर्वाणि भूतानि कूटस्थोऽक्षर उच्यते उत्तमः पुरुषस्त्वन्यः परमात्मेत्युदाहृतः यो लोकत्रयमाविश्य बिभर्तव्य ईश्वरः यस्मात् तक्षरमतीतोऽहम् अक्षरादपि चोत्तमः अतोऽस्मि लोके वेदे च प्रतितः पुरुषोत्तमः.
Thank you for that contemplation, Pradibhaji. So to see a thing, two conditions are required in the mundane world: material eyes and a material object. Okay, two conditions are required to see anything. Okay, but here is the problem: both are not applicable to us to see God. We cannot use our material eyes to know about him, and he is non-material as well. So both conditions do not apply here to see God. So we need to understand this. We need material eyes to see material object. But if something is non-material, we cannot use material eyes. You need something non-material. So this is how you build the thesis. Okay, we cannot see him with our material eyes because he is non-material. Implies other jnana indriyas too. Okay, so we build the philosophy a little bit further. Okay, so natatra chakshur gacchati. Material eyes cannot obtain the knowledge of him. We have studied so far. But if you remember in the first two verses, we have always been thinking about the Tattva Abhimani Devatas, the Devatas of the eyes. Abhimani Vyapadeshastu Visesha Anugatibhyam. We have to apply that. So who is the Tattva Abhimani Devata of the eye? Who is going to give us the answer? Quick answer. Surya is the Tattva Abhimani Devata of the eye. Yeah. So even Surya cannot reach him or know him. Okay, is what the sense there. Na tatra chakshur gacchati, because in the previous verse he says chakshushash chakshuhu. He is inside the Surya as his Antaryamin and controlling him. But that Surya himself does not know anything about him. Even Surya cannot reach him, is what Chaturmukha is saying. Tattvabhimani Devatas. Yeah. So material eyes cannot obtain knowledge of him. Tattvabhimani Devatas also. Here it means Surya cannot reach him or know him. What about the Jiva Swarupa in samsara? No way. Okay, because we are so much shrouded with ignorance. What about Jiva Swarupa in Aparoksha Jnana? Will that have a knowledge of God? Possibly, as Pratibhaji mentioned, based upon our own capacity. But we are still in the material plane, where we are so much shrouded with ignorance that our Jivachadhika is so much that we cannot see him. Yeah, at this point. So that is why Natatra Chakshur Gacchati. Mundaka Upanishad has a very, very similar verse. We should always see what other Upanishads are saying, an opportunity for our revision. Na chakshusha gruhyate, look here, gruhyate. There in Kena it's gachati. Here is gruhyate. Gruhyate means grasp. Yeah. Na chakshusha gruhyate, na pivacha, na anyair devaihi tapasa karmanava. Then, of course, we saw this one, isn't it? Jnana prasadena vishuddha sattvaha tatastutam pashyate nishkalam jayamanaha. Cannot be seen with eyes, cannot be understood with words. Other devatas cannot show us. Neither penance or austerities. Their tapasa means Rudra. Karmana means Karma Abhimani Devata is Pushkara. Tapas Abhimani Devata is Rudra, which is exactly what our Kena is talking about. Ashabdam, Asparsham, Arupam, Avyayam, Tata, Arasam, Nityam, Agandavachayat. Katha Upanishad again. All the five, objects, sense objects, is different from all that. Arasa, Ashabdam, Asparsham. Yato vacho nivartante, aprapya manasasaha. Yato vacho nivartante, with vak, he cannot be explained fully. Aprapya, he cannot be grasped by mind. Manas, Rudra, saha. Naisha tarkena matihi apaneya. Prokta anyenaiva. Sugnanaya preshta is important in Katha Upanishad. Go back and revise. Na isha tarkena matihi apaneya. Apaneya, aneya, apaneya, apaneya. All those etymologies, we have done that. So go back and understand. So all the scriptures say the same thing. And in our satsang, we should, as I said before, never waste time. Never lose the opportunity to think about it. So we cannot see him with our material eyes because he is not material, implies other jnana indriyas too, plus also all the tattvabhimani devatas too. Okay, they also cannot know him, says Chaturmukha Brahma, but there is an answer to it. What does it mean when you say cannot know him? As Pratibhaji said, cannot know him fully. That is the answer. Can we at least know about him fully by hearing from what others say? So we have said about perception, right? What about walk? We'll do this and then close today's session. Na tatra chakshur gacchati, na vag gacchati. Words cannot reach him. We cannot know him through words. Okay, this is something that we need to think about. Just because we have read the Gita, just because we are doing Upanishad Chintana, does not mean we know about Paramatma. No, it doesn't mean that. Okay? Because there is something called Paroksha Jnana and Aparoksha Jnana that we are all very familiar in this satsang. So all these readings is all what preliminary stage to reach and obtain that Paroksha Jnana. That is indirect knowledge. All the words and everything is Paroksha means what? Indirect. Aparoksha means direct knowledge. So we haven't reached that Aparoksha Jnana stage. It is only in the Aparoksha Jnana stage you have some opportunity. But right now, Vag na gacchati. Okay. Then, of course, the question is why we are studying the Vedas, and I've just gave you the answer about this paroksha jnana and aparoksha jnana, which needs to be applied here to understand this. What is the limitation of language? We have done this before, isn't it? And that is what Omkara Chintana was all about. If you think about it, Om, three components: Akara, Ukara, and Makara. It gives you a concept of God. Akara stands for Allah, not this. Illa, no. Viruddha, opposite. Yeah. Nisheda vachakaha, akara. Neti neti na grihyate. Neti neti is one of the key verses of the Upanishad. Neti neti means he is not this, he is not this. Na iti is neti. He is not this, he is not this means what? He is not this material thing. He is not a car, he is not a motorbike, he is not a pen, he is not a book. That is all you can start off. You always start about the concept of God in a negative sense. Why? Because in school we have done this, isn't it? How does a teacher teaches language? He or she will pick an object and say this object is a giraffe. So when somebody shows an object and says it's a giraffe, then our mind links up that sound with that object, and that is how we learn language. So next time when somebody says giraffe, you will be able to think about that object that you have seen either in a picture or in a safari. Okay? But if you have not seen an object before, if somebody says giraffe, it is just a word. You will never get the knowledge of the giraffe. That is our position. All the Upanishads and the Rishis, they have documented their experience of Paramatma, and they've given us these words. But we have actually not seen the Paramatma at this point, so we actually do not know what it is. Yeah. So that is all the limitations of language. So think about this complex ideas. Okay. Vedas document the experience of Rishis, but for us it is still a set of words only. Okay, and we need to understand this and put it into our head. Yeah, we have not reached that aparoksha jnana state that the rishis have reached. Yeah, but we have to walk that. They have given us a guide map, and if you do that, that guide map will take us eventually to aparoksha jnana. Okay, so all the Vedas that we do leads to indirect knowledge only initially. That is paroksha jnana. This is a key problem. Okay, but of course, Vedas are the only route of knowing Paramatma. Na aveda vin manute bruhantam sarvanubhum atmanam samparaye. Na indriyani na anumanam vedahi eva enam vedayanti tasmadahuhu vedaha. Napi vacha na vag gacchati. Napi vacha mundaka Upanishad. Kena Upanishad na vag gacchati. Whereas our Brahma Sutra says Shastra Yonitvat. He can be known only through Shastras. Srimad Acharya and Vishnu Tattva Nirnaya says Sadagamaika Vigneyam. Sad Agamaika Vigneyam. Sad Agama Eka Vigneyam. He can be known only through Agamas. How? To reach a stage of paroksha jnana, which eventually lead to his grace and leads to aparoksha jnana. So that is the route that it is in that perspective we need to kind of balance or square this circle. If he is unknowable, unknowable. And paroksha jnana, aparoksha jnana. Okay? Navag gacchati, speech cannot obtain the knowledge of him. Also means Tattvabhimani Devata of Vak. So who is going to tell us who is the Tattvabhimani Devata of Vak? Agni Parvati. Parvati. Thank you very much, Prakashji. Parvati. Agni initially discussed, but primarily here there is a difference. Vak and Vag Indriya. There are subtle differences there that we'll pick up in the next class. But Parvati comes very important here for Vak. Yeah, after Agni, it is Parvati. And the same Parvati comes subsequently in Talavakara Upanishad as a teacher for Indra in the second Kanda, which is beautiful. Okay, so it becomes very relevant here about Parvati, Tattvabhimani Devata of Vak. Okay, so we cannot see him with our material Indriyas because he is not material, implies other Indriyas, also the Tattvabhimani Devatas. Okay, and the Vak, this is important. Can we experience him? The answer as to why speech cannot describe him. How can it describe something that is infinite? That which is infinite cannot be explained by limited words fully. So that is the key idea there. Even Vedas are infinite. Okay, but even that Vedas, the infinite Vedas cannot actually fully explain the infinite glory of Paramatma. Okay, but that is the instrument that we have to know about him. Okay. Can we at least know about him fully by hearing what others say? Yeah. Possibly not, as we have seen. Yeah. Then the question is, what about the mind? What about the mind? Can I not read the Vedas? Don't have to see, can I just go simply sit in some meditation in a deep corner and contemplate, and suddenly I'll get a darshan of Paramatma? Chaturmukha says, no manaha. And why does he say no manaha? Then he says, na vidmaha. Then he says, na vijani maha. Yat yetat anusishyat. That becomes very important. So if we do the full contemplation of the first line, then the second line becomes more understandable in what spirit Chaturmukha Brahma is saying. That then what we will do is we'll come back to the Pramana Lakshanam. And in the Pramana Lakshanam and Pramana Paddhati, Acharya and Jayatirtha have told us what are all the gradations of knowledge. Who has got infinite knowledge? And how is that gradation, Taratamya of knowledge that is there in Pramana Lakshanam is super. It's really, really beautiful. What is the knowledge? What is the status of knowledge of Paramatma? What is the status of knowledge of Lakshmi? What is the knowledge of Chaturmukha Brahma, Vayu, Saraswati, Bharati? What is the knowledge of Tattvabhimani Devatas? What is the knowledge of Atatva Yogins, as it's called? What is the knowledge of Ayogins? All those things come. The Ayogins are the ones, we are all in the satsangs are Ayogins. Okay, and in that there are various classifications. They're called the Mukti Yogyas. Mukti Yogyas, probably all of us in this satsang, I hope. And for them, what is that knowledge that they know about the external world and also about the Paramatma? So if we understood that Pramana Lakshana and Pramana Paddhati, then we can very beautifully understand Natatra Chakshur Gacchati Navag Gacchati No Manaha. So we will pick up those deep ideas of epistemology in the next class. We are still hopeful. I think we might have the Gita Chintana next Sunday. If it is going to be delayed by another week, then we'll pick up all these key ideas of knowledge in our satsang. Yeah, next Sunday. So on that note, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope it was not too heavy on deep philosophical ideas, but I think that's what we need to be doing, to think about these deeper ideas rather than skimming, just surfing the surface, which as satsangis we have never done over the last 5 years. So we will stick to these ideas of pramana lakshana, and then understand knowledge itself. What is knowledge? Yeah. So Krishna Pranamastu. Any questions? We can take it up now. Excellent. So looks like we have no questions today. In that case, can I ask Suresh ji to do Omkara Chintana, and we close today's session. Suresh ji. Thank you very much, Suresh ji, and everybody stay safe. We'll catch up again next Sunday. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mr. Janji.